Hi, I'm Andy Acton.
And I'm Chris Strevens.
This is Dentology, the Business of Dentistry podcast.
Wow.
When you talk to some people and you kind of have a sense of who they are and what they've done, but then you hear kind of, you dig into the pages, the amount that Rahul has done across dentistry is quite remarkable.
I must admit, when when we were talking to him, he's younger than me, and his book is very full. If he had like one of those, those like yearbooks, it would have lots of pages in it of things that he's done. It's quite fascinating, really, isn't it? And he's very modest. He's very modest about it. He's not very unassuming.
I think the word came up a couple of times. We used the word pioneer, and I think that's deserving of Rahul. He is a pioneer.
Yes, yeah.
He started doing cosmetic dentistry with a focus very early on. But underpinned with, function, longevity. It wasn't just about the cosmetics, but he created a practice with that as a focus.
I think the fact that I think you mentioned it, and I know he mentioned it, but I hadn't really thought about it, that creating the name Perfect Smile 25 years ago, when everyone else was Smiley Dental or Is a Tooth. And probably actually they weren't called Smiley Dental, were they? To be brutally honest, they were either called like Strevens and Associates or the name of the town, and no one really had embraced that you can call a dental practice something else.
And also how he kind of lent into business because out of necessity. It was a really good conversation, and there's so many things in there that have changed and so many things that haven't changed. He's been doing, the right sorts of things to have a successful practice for 25 years. And lots of people think they're new tactics today. But I think all that's changed is the way they go about it has changed.
I love the fact, that when he said, and I think this is a key thing for anyone to take away, is when he got the keys to that first practice, it was like, oh, what do I do now?
What do I do now?
I think that's brilliant because one, I'm sure everybody has the what do I do now, but also there's probably way more support now than there was when he did it.
Yeah.
To say, right, what do I do now? Hey, I know where I can go.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think the support structure in place now is way more developed than it was back then. Really wonderful conversation. So what time is it and what day is it?
I reckon it could be Monday. And I reckon it could be 7 a.m.
It is. And
look at that. I'm on the ball.
We're notching them off one by one, aren't we?
We are. Another day in my pajamas with my cup of tea.
It's still an incredibly enjoyable part of the things we get to do. This still ranks very high. It's still good fun.
I think personally it's because we have really good guests.
Yeah. Nothing to do with us at all.
Nothing to do with us at all. They make it very interesting and entertaining. And we just let them go. I think it's lovely. That's brilliant. I've learned so much from all our guests. It's brilliant. And even the guests that we've known for a very long time. I think it's rare, isn't it? That we come out with not thinking, I didn't know that.
It's like a cheeky way of doing market research, isn't it? Isn't it? It's like the world's best way of getting into the minds of some of the most incredible people in dentistry.
And finding out what they really think. I think it's brilliant.
And if you wrap it up in a podcast, you get away with doing it.
Yeah. And it's entertaining, allegedly.
It is. So anyway, today we have a very, very special guest, someone we've been trying to pin down for quite a while, and we're delighted to have him on. We have Dr. Rahul Doshi joining us, and Rahul is a dentist, former practice owner, and a strategic profit coach. Welcome, Rahul. How are you?
Hello.
All good. Thanks for inviting me. Great to be here today.
No, absolutely. No, it's nice. It's nice. It's funny, when we started this project, there were certain people we said, right, it would be great if we could get and we went down the list, and you were on that list. And we're now 190 plus episodes, and we only just got you on now. So well done for avoiding us for so long.
190 episodes. That's amazing. Well done.
It is. It's been good fun. It's been really good fun.
It's entertaining. Well, we think it's entertaining. We have a good time.
Yeah, we're not sure if anybody else does, but hey.
Yeah. Well, the listeners listen. So I suppose the answer is we're doing all right, really.
They do. We always like to kick off at the beginning, and the beginning is one of those places where we believe that there's clues of who we are. No, nobody wants to hear me singing. There's clues of who we become from our childhood. And it's a case of, could you just give us a sense of who you are, what your childhood was like, where you were brought up, what's the family setting look like? That's a nice place to start our conversation.
What school you went to?
Sure, of course. I was actually born in Mombasa in Kenya. So I
Right.
was there till I was 7. So it was a great family atmosphere to have grown up in. And we moved over in 1975 when I was about 7 years old. And actually, the first few years were difficult because it was a new country. I was very young, going to a whole new environment, whole new setup.
Did you come over as a family?
We came up as a family.
Right.
So that was that, and then settled into school, and then I ended up in the same school as Chris,
We did.
in Raiders Lane in 1979 for 5 years, doing up to GCSEs or GCSEs.
Scary. And I didn't know that, did I, Rahul? Until many years ago, our listeners won't know, but I used to work in a bank, run a bank, and Rahul and I think I lent you some money, didn't I? And it was only when Rahul did his CV, I went, oh,
Same school.
you went to the same school. Obviously, regrettably for me, I am a bit older than Rahul, so a whole lot. I think you joined when I was leaving. I think something like that.
Probably yes. Yeah.
So what was the reason for your family leaving Kenya and coming to the UK?
So actually, I think it was preventative in the sense of the Idi Amin episode occurred in Uganda. There was this thing that could it occur in Kenya? If it did, I think my dad would have been without a country, shall I say, at that time. But Kenya was part of the British sort of overseas Commonwealth, so that's how people came in here.
What did your dad do, Rahul?
So he actually owned pharmaceutical businesses. So they were always in the business side, but also involved with healthcare. And that's probably, I'd say, how I ended up in dentistry, because I think I wanted to be in some healthcare profession. But I also enjoyed, I used to be at the pharmacy a lot during the holidays. And we had a pharmacy in Kenya as well. And I used to go there during summer holidays and spend my time there. So I got to know a lot of the business side of things whilst I was there as well.
Oh, okay. Did he have a pharmacy here?
He did.
Oh, okay. Where was that? Were you sort of in northwest London then or something?
Yeah, so we were in northwest London. So he had that for a good 10, 15 years, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Brilliant. And how did you adjust coming from Kenya to northwest London? What was that adjustment like, and what did London look like when you arrived?
I think it was so different. So we came from a super warm climate. I left my entire extended family there. My grandma, who I was very close to, my cousins, who I was very close to really not knowing anybody here. And obviously my English probably then would have been very weak. We were taught in English, but probably not the sort of dialect and the same way of speaking over here. Just acclimatizing to school here was a bit challenging as well.
Sure. Were people generally welcoming back then?
Mixture. So some welcoming, some not welcoming. So had some challenging journeys to and back to school. So actually, so when I used to go to Athol, say, that was a few years later, that was a good hour and a half journey by train and bus to get there. So those are the type of journeys that we used to do.
Really? Well, it took you an hour and a half to get to school?
Yeah. So, I mean, if my dad dropped me, which he could sometimes, that was by car, that would be a 25-minute journey. But otherwise, it'd be trains and buses.
Cool, that was dedicated.
Wow.
Have you got siblings, Rahul? I've never
I have a brother. So yeah, he's
Is he older or younger?
He's younger. He's 5 years younger.
Right.
And is he a dentist?
No, he's an optician, and he went to the same school as us as well. So 5 years after me.
I know, I'd have well gone by then.
So you settling into England, you do your mainstream schooling. You then, through the pharmaceutical connection, medicine, decide that dentistry is for you. Which dental school did you go to? And was that a good experience?
Yeah, so I went to Guy's. I think that was a great experience. It actually, was tough while you're there because you did so much and you gained so much experience in doing the different facets of dentistry. And even at that time, I remember that I enjoyed doing what we call indirect restorations, like crowns and onlays and stuff. And I did a hell of a lot there. And I actually enjoyed it. I didn't realize that was the niche that I truly enjoyed.
Yeah, that already pointed you on that path, didn't it?
Did you own I always remember when I first started in dentistry, people used to say, oh, you can tell a guy's graduate because they always wear a blue double-breasted blazer. It's really funny. So did you have a blue double-breasted blazer, Rahul?
I actually don't think I did.
Yeah, look at that. It goes against the flow.
I don't think it did. I may have had a single-breasted blue.
Everyone sort of had to blazer. Go on, they're from guys, you can tell.
What was interesting when you were describing your time there is how much experience you got and how much practical work you did. And speaking to lots of younger dentists, that does seem to be something that over the decades has fallen away. In terms of there seems to be a lot more around the theory, around the administration, around kind of the ethics, the legality of dentistry, but not so much actually treating and learning how to deliver the dentistry. But it sounds like you got a lot of exposure in that when you were at Guy's.
I think that was critical actually because it gave you confidence to do things. Especially, people consider root fillings challenging. And if you've done a significant amount of them under supervision, you feel confident of doing that when you go into practice. And same with just any type of restoration. So that experience, I think there was a system where we had to reach a number of targets for each of these. And that was very good. But I think those targets have reduced quite significantly. So the experience level, I think, potentially has changed.
It does sound very much like when dentists move into their foundation training period, that's when they actually start to acquire their practical experience that they've learned in a theoretical setting at dental school. And that puts a lot of pressure on the trainer. Because it's not necessarily just supervisory, it's kind of training and educating. But from a confidence point of view, the thing you said, we do gain so much confidence from practicing things when they go well. It gives us that confidence to go on to the next level.
Well, we've heard of some people, haven't they? They've rocked up and they've never done an extraction on a molar.
Yeah.
Or they've never done an extraction. And it's like, how can you go through years of dental school and not know how to take a tooth out? But it seems to be almost, as you say, it's so much more less experience based. It seems to be practical based, probably maybe is a better choice, but it's just mad, really.
And I think the challenge it brings is and you've been in this situation as a practice owner, there must be frustrations on the practice owner's part that when they see younger dentists coming in, looking for associate positions, they just don't have the experience that you'd have had on a like-for-like age when you came from dental school. So there seems to be quite a lot of frustration in the profession that, it's not moaning, but there's a frustration from older dentists because they're not seeing younger dentists with the experience that they want and need. But I don't think it's necessarily their fault, is it? It seems like the system's changed.
No, and I think that the actual reliance on actually good sort of mentors when you join a practice, at foundational training, or more importantly, postgraduate education is now there. So that's the first thing that people look for is how much further work have they done in improving their skill level. And I think that's an important thing that, I used to look at on CVs.
I mean, we'll come on to your own kind of learning and education and the specialty, and you're somebody who, even at dental school, already had an interest in cosmetic dentistry. But there does seem to be a shift where lots of younger dentists are doubling down and very quickly focusing on the cosmetic end of dentistry. And is that sometimes at the cost of developing out their general skills early on in their career?
Interesting.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, the first few years of my dental sort of career, I was just doing general dentistry, and that was really for the best part of 10 years, I'd say.
I think that's great for people to hear, Rahul, because I think lots of people they kind of want to specialise in whatever area soon. But to hear you say you did 10 years of general dentistry, I think
it's almost like muscle memory in a way, isn't it? Doing stuff and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's important, really more for planning,
Mm,
because you're not just doing cosmetic. Cosmetic is the end effect, because
mm,
anything can be cosmetic, whether you're doing a denture, a
yeah.
filling, a full smile. But the whole thing is based on a couple of things, which is treatment planning. And treatment
Mm.
planning does need the knowledge of general dentistry, especially if
Mm,
you want to create successful, long-lasting results for patients, which is really the aim.
Mm. I was just
absolutely.
wondering, actually, is it, and I've never thought about this before, is it because, in a way, maybe when you started in dentistry, people's dental health was generally worse than it is now? So, therefore, there was more basic stuff to do? Or is it the fact you think that, or has general dental health got better, or is it exactly sort of the same, really? Just intrigued.
Well, if we look at the number of patients who end up in a dental practice, that percentage has still remain similar
Mm.
from now
Mm,
to 30 years ago. Now, unfortunately, I can't speak for patients in the sort of slightly deprived areas or on national health. I don't know what their looks like now, so I've
Mm.
lost touch with that. But if I was there, that will probably give me a little bit more insight as to how patients present. But I
Mm.
still see patients with similar problems as I did long time ago, as you would now.
No, okay.
mm.
Mm. Interesting.
So your career, we've got a lot to talk about because you've done so much. But can you kind of just give us the
Potted history.
highlights from coming out of dental school, being an associate, and then your most recent senior position was as clinical director of Dentex. What kind of fits within those bookends? What things, big things, happened in your career?
I think right at the beginning, to be honest with you, I'll just go back to education. So I did a lot of courses, went
Mm,
out to US a significant number of times on so many varied courses, not just on cosmetic dentistry, a significant number on treatment planning, occlusion. That's the mainstay of wanting to ensure that whatever I did worked. And perio as well. So really not just cosmetic dentistry, although that was
mm,
my passion. That's what I wanted to do. We started and evolved into delivering cosmetic dentistry from the year 2000. And that's when we were almost like the pioneering dentists of cosmetic dentistry in the
mm,
country. Probably the first to have a name with a cosmetic orientation called the Perfect Smile.
yeah.
Mm.
Previously, the names of dental practices were either the name of the towns or a family dental practice or something related to an apple, etc. So
Mm,
that changed, uh, and that created that focal point. Um, and then whilst we were doing that, met a lot of people who are on that same journey, and that's when I got involved with the British Academy of Cosmetic Dentistry, because actually bouncing off ideas with each other, networking, going on similar courses was really really, really beneficial for all of us, leading to me almost a decade later becoming the president of the British Academy of Cosmetic Dentistry. So that was one of the things. And
where does your zest for learning come from, Rahul? What is it about learning that really draws you in? Because there's a real theme in all the things you've done about courses, personal development,
Yeah, wanting to
learning,
know more.
growth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's trying to deliver the best. And when you try and
Mm,
deliver the best, you have to become have knowledge, and then gain the experience. So you gain the experience by doing the type of dentistry that you really enjoy. So you do become some level of I'm not saying I'm a master, but you become a master in that area. So you
mm,
become more and more confident and you can actually overcome any challenges. So I think that trying to be as best as you can is a key thing. It's almost like any, I'd say, and going to the business side, any widget that you sell a
mm,
quality product that's going to be long lasting and successful, that's going to bring in success for an enduring period. You try and go for short, quick wins, that's not going to achieve real success. And therefore,
mm,
that zest for learning really came to delivering a quality product, which really meant that learning was multifaceted. I spoke about cosmetics, but then there is occlusion and treatment planning. Then there is things like laser dentistry, and then you come to the communication side of and developing the practice as a business. So it's really multifaceted.
It's really interesting, isn't it? I was just thinking as you were talking, I was thinking if you you sort of forget, don't you, that 25 years ago, whenever it was in the year 2000, almost cosmetic dentistry and aesthetic dentistry was almost a little bit cranky. I don't mean that in a weird way, but it wasn't as mainstream thought of as it is now. It's quite an interesting one, isn't it? I was only just, as you were talking, I was thinking most dentists probably then would have just been, I'll drill and fill and I'll do some crowns. They wouldn't have been thinking about the whole aesthetic cosmetic side of it. But now new dentists, they think that probably that not to have that would be bonkers. I'm trying to think of a sort of analogy, but like almost every car you buy now is an automatic car, whereas 40 years ago it was a rarity. Whereas people now think, what, you mean people used to change gear? It just doesn't fit. And I think dentistry's evolved. I hadn't really thought about it.
I think what's lovely as well is, Rahul, when you were saying about, it's about function, it's about longevity, and then the cosmetic bit is kind of how it looks at the end. And I think that's a great reminder, because it's easy for it just to become a modern version and a catch-all for an awful lot of what's going on. But to hear that it's underpinned by, good function, good dentistry that's going to last a long time. Oh, and then we make it look really nice. That.
As opposed to turkey teeth, where we'll file them down and shove something on it, and then we'll just wait and see what happens in 10 years' time or something.
It's funny, Chris said about sort of 20 years ago, because it was about 20 years ago as well that you got involved not only as a learner for yourself, but as an educator, because you got involved in 10 Years Younger, one of the very early television programs where they kind of gave people a makeover, and you were the dental contributor. So from an education point of view, you didn't only learn yourself, you were able to use that as a platform to educate the UK population at large about what dentistry really is and the sorts of things that dentists can do. Nowadays, we see lots of people doing makeovers of sorts through their social media channels. But you were in a different world of media, because this was mainstream television. And 20 odd years ago, there was no social media.
Yeah, well, you were a bit like a TV star. So, like, did people stop you in the street and say, "Hey, Rahul, can I have?" Or Dr. Doshi, they probably called you. And did you get like really good tables in restaurants?
No, that never happened. So people did recognize the program when I mentioned it, but I was never ever stopped on the street and say, "I recognize that you're the dentist from Extreme." It was Extreme Makeover, by the way.
Extreme Makeover. Sorry. Yeah. So was it good? So obviously, what was kind of your thought process in doing this? Was it good for exposure? Was it good for business, or did it just turn out to be a complete pain in the backside?
So whilst you were filming it, it was a real pain. Because normally when you treat a patient, it would take you 4 or 5 hours. This would be filmed over the course of a day, and you repeat some aspects or pretend you're doing some bits while you're doing it. All for literally a 10, 15-minute snippet that would arise out of 2 days, the prep and the fit and the consultation as well. So, and the funny thing was, we never rehearsed for it. We never actually thought what we're going to say. We just did it live on TV, which you'd probably you wouldn't do right now, I'd say, for many reasons. And actually, it was enjoyable. So I look back. I haven't watched those videos for years, to be honest with you. It was great for brand awareness, but actually, yes, it was really good for business, because we did get a lot of patients who used to watch the programs and then seek us out, even several years after, because they did keep on repeating that on TV. So yes.
I suppose it's early, as you say, it's early. It's the same as people try to do on their social media profiles, isn't it? And raise their profile. You had it done on national TV, and people go, "Ooh,
it's no different.
I want to go there."
Yeah. Yes, but I also think that from an educating the UK population on dentistry, I think it was brilliant. And there were you and a few others that did an amazing job explaining to us as patients, as non-clinicians, what these words, what these treatments actually mean, and the sorts of things that dentists can do and could do and should do. Because quite often, you just didn't didn't know.
No.
So we're
You
going
went
back,
to dentist and they drilled your teeth.
Yeah, it was like 22 years ago.
Were there any of your compatriots who were a bit weird with you about it? Like, oh, I can't believe you're on TV, Rahul. What are you doing? Or were there jealousy, or was everyone generally sort of like affirming?
I don't think so. I don't think there was any jealousy. I think people were asking, why did I do it? In the sense that there was no monies paid to be on TV. So you did it.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned, there's a significant amount of time that was taken doing it. And I think people who should have done it didn't do it because of that, probably. And that probably was a mistake, or in hindsight, perhaps, now if they look back in that. So I think that was a great decision on being on that program.
As a marketing tool, even though you weren't paid, the exposure you got was enormous, because it's 20 years on and we're still sitting here talking about it.
How much does it cost to go on national TV, to advertise on national TV?
Yeah,
quite a lot of money, I would imagine.
And also, I think sometimes you just have a hunch that it's going to be good, it's going to be worthwhile, it's going to be fun, and it's quite hard to sit down and categorically put an ROI on it. But I think sometimes that's where you get in your own way by trying to overanalyze things and work out what it's going to be like. If your hunch was it's going to be good and you do it, and actually it works out really well for you. You've over your career, we've talked a lot about your clinical training, the work you've done treating patients and being a dentist. But over the years, you've also lent quite heavily on the non-clinical side of dentistry as well. I've got a list here. I'm going to have to look at the list. So you've already mentioned you're president at the BACD, a private dentistry and dental industry awards judge, founding board member of the BAPD, and then moving into as clinical director of Dentex. That business side of things, early on in your career, did you always see that there was going to be a large element of your career on the business side of dentistry, or did it evolve?
In honesty, I think it evolved. I think when you start to own a practice, I still remember the first time I was handed the keys of a practice as a youngster. I got the keys, and my first thoughts are, what do I do now? And I had a team of people in front of me. So I soon learned that I need to become a leader, motivate my team, learn that side of developing a team very early on. And this was literally 3 years after qualifying that we owned our first practice. And then what I realized was that to enjoy the type of dentistry that you really want to do, and I did enjoy cosmetic, whilst I was clinical director at Dentex, I stopped clinical dentistry for 5 or 6 odd years, and I missed it. And that's how much I enjoyed it. So now I do go back and do the odd case because I still enjoy that. But to gain that experience, to gain that passion, you needed to see the type of patients that wanted that and needed that. So marketing became an important facet that you needed to learn as a business side. But then when you actually did the marketing, it wasn't just about actually doing the marketing, it's about actually converting and getting the patients to go ahead for the treatment that was correct for them, for their teeth, their mouth, and their smile. And that's when communication came in. And therefore you needed to learn communication skills, not by me only, but actually for the entire team. Because it's the patient journey that you created for that to actually occur. And for that, then you go back again. You need to motivate and develop the team to the highest level. So all this business side actually came in because there was a necessity for me to deliver great dentistry, to enjoy what I was doing, and to deliver the best and do lots of it because that's what I wanted to do.
Did you, when you were kicking around at school and choosing to go to dental school, did you have any thought that your career, 30 years on would look like this in terms of, you really have ticked so many boxes, that list I run, there'll be dental students listening to this, or young associates looking at it and being like, that's just unachievable. That is just ridiculous to be president of this and founder of that and owning practices and clinical director of a large corporate. Did you ever envisage that was a possibility as a young Rahul?
I don't think I envisaged that at all. I think I'd just be an average dentist after I qualified, potentially owning a practice, and that's what I thought I would be. But when I look at, and you mentioned the list here, to be honest with you, I don't ever think of what I've achieved. I just look at what I want to do in the future. So some of the things you mentioned, and even whilst we were talking of what have I done, I forget. I forgot that I actually used to do hands-on training in cosmetic dentistry for a good 15 years. And I'd left that probably about several years ago. So you start forgetting what you've done and you just focus on what you need to do for the future. And I think that's always been my focus.
It's quite a good. That's a good lesson for people to listen to, really, isn't it? Yeah. Well, our past is part of us, and it's our experience. But actually, try not to focus on that. Focus on the future.
Yeah.
There's lessons to learn.
Yeah.
Don't. What was that thing? If you keep thinking about the past, you never move forward. I can't quite remember what the phrase is, but it's interesting.
So your kind of business skills, business development interest came out of the necessity because you're a practice owner and you looked at this group of people who had to be led, and you were going to be that leader. Is there? It appears from my point of view that younger dentists are keen to get involved on the business side of dentistry much earlier than perhaps you might have in your day. From listening to you talk about your commitment to kind of that learning and training and developing your clinical skills. Are you seeing that? And is that a good thing? Is it not a good thing? What's your view on that?
No, I think it's a really important thing because we're still trying to strive to give the best to our patients. To do that, a lot of dentistry needs to be multifaceted. That needs to be communicated well to the patient without trying to be salesy, but that they understand their problem. So communication instantly becomes a very important part or a business tool. You're going to be working in a team, and therefore a team working with you, especially now post-COVID, where working in a team is even more challenging. So you've got to really be motivating your team to work with you to another level. So leadership skills actually are really super important. And then you're going to go on courses, and whatever your interests are, it might be general dentistry, might be root canals, might be perio, might be occlusion, might be ortho. You want to follow that. And how do you follow that is by learning to try and get the patients that you want to try and see, and still look after those patients by working with other dentists in your team who can deliver the bits that you perhaps don't want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes perfect sense. What would you practice success? And I know success is kind of whatever you want it to be, but by your definition of practice success, what's the secret sauce to being successful? What's the thing that you did on a repetitive basis that meant that your practice was successful? Because you said Perfect Smile, but Perfect Smile is an outstanding name, and I think it was the original. I always think of it as being kind of the original practice that positioned itself in the market in that way. I can't think of anybody before that had taken that.
Didn't have an apple.
Yeah, that market position. So what is the success of that practice and the success of the other things you've done? What is the secret sauce? What's the thing that you do or you've learned over those years that feeds into that success?
I think there are many things, to be honest with you. So I think let's start off with a vision of what you're going to do that's going to be different and that's going to be unique, that people can look at and will look at years later. Once to develop that vision, I keep on mentioning we need a team, and that means developing a culture where people want to be there, enjoy working there, and want to be part of a great team. So I went back to the practice just a few weeks ago, and my nurse of 20 years is now the manager. The people that were there are still there 15 years on, 10 years on, 12 years on. And this is after I left the practice. And that's because what was left behind was a DNA of how things work and a process. So we created systems, and those systems were honed in through regular training. And so they kept on, even though I left the practice doing dentistry probably about 7 years ago.
Yeah, you create a legacy, I suppose.
Yeah, I love that idea about, a business having a DNA. But as you say, it has to start from the leader with the vision.
It has to be authentic, doesn't it? That's the thing. If it's not authentic DNA, it collapses.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And you're right, because it has to be reinforced. And I think so often people assume it's a one-time thing. Oh yeah, you set the vision, you tell people what it is, and then you assume that they're just going to work out how to deliver that. But if you're not constantly reinforcing it, and also through your own behaviours as well, in terms of how you work and you behave. And now, I mean, you've worked with your wife Bhavna for many years, but now you work with her particularly on this kind of helping practices grow and improve their profitability. And timing for that's really good, because the past few years for many practice owners have been quite tricky, because we had rampant inflation for a period of time that had a knock-on effect to wages and utility costs.
Interest rates.
Yeah, interest rates increased. We then had the fallout from COVID of some people leaving the profession. So recruiting and retaining people hasn't been easy. Costs have gone up. So I think all those things have an impact on the underlying profitability of the practice. So the work that you do with Bhavna is important, because it helps practices improve their profitability. Based on the experience and the practices that you work with, what are the quick wins that people can do to improve their profit? What are the things that people kind of neglect and overlook because they just don't pay attention to them to the extent they should?
Or don't see them.
Yeah, blind spots.
Yeah, I think it comes down to, I go back to the team. I think the team are the key thing, because if you lose team members, you've lost a valuable asset of knowledge. Then there is training time involved. So the amount of money sort of you need to actually spend into recruiting, training, passing that knowledge on is a significant amount of time. So actually reminding people of the values of the practice, how to be, reminding people of the vision, and on all being engaged in that vision of what the practice is all about, and being excited of being there. That's one of the first few wins. Although it may feel that it takes a little bit of time to create that, and it's not a quick win, it's probably the most important win, shall I say. The second thing I'd say is continuous engagement with your patients, in terms of making sure they're looked after, because yes, there is marketing, but there's nothing better than word of mouth marketing, and actually people being satisfied and referring more like-minded or like-type patients to the practice, and then using all that in terms of promoting the practices, whether it's via reviews, testimonials, before and after photos, makeover photos that you do, or even having conversations with them, interviewing them, putting them onto YouTube. So there are many things that people can do very quickly in that way to actually start propagating people finding out about that practice.
You know what I love when you listen to Rahul about things to help develop. I love the fact that in reality, they're no real different than they were when you started 20 years ago or 25 years ago. What the difference is of how they're done. We would have always said, you'd have always said do testimonials, but it would have been people had to write you letters. You'd have had before and after pictures that you'd taken on a really good SLR with a flash ring. It would be, you'd ask for referrals, but you'd give them a card. It's that, and you'd follow them up. I find it fascinating that people almost sometimes forget that the good dentists like yourself, Rahul, this is where you excelled and where you really sort of broke the mold with changing the way things were done. And it's how that evolves over the years, in the fact that the same thing applies.
You do it in a
it's
slightly
just a
different
different
way.
communication platform. And it's almost like, well, this is like brand new. Well, no, Rahul was doing this 25 years ago.
And I think part of the challenge is when you were doing it 25 years ago, Rahul, you were an outlier, as Malcolm Gladwell would describe. You were on the edges. So you stood out for doing that. Whereas I think now, lots of people understand the importance of Google reviews. Everybody understands the importance of testimonials. There's, just jump on Instagram. There's endless befores and afters. So it's now we're in a world where, okay, so now how do you stand out? Because what you were doing back then made you stand out. But over those 20 years, everybody's caught up. Everybody's doing that. So it's how do you shift yourself into a new space to look a bit different? And that's kind of the sort of the next renaissance, isn't it?
But I think also in there, and isn't it, as we know with the media guys, there's so many people that don't. They don't think about it. They just don't even look at it.
Yeah.
Because it's an interesting...
Just going back to, you were talking about the importance of the team and people and ongoing training to make sure that culture stays strong, so that when you step away from the business, those behaviours are repeated on a daily basis. What are your views around how much people in the business should be paid? Let's just say there's kind of lower, middle and upper, because we know that pay is an important part of why lots of people come to work, because they've got their bills to pay. But have you always been somebody who's trying to push towards the upper end, or are you somebody who believes that if you create the right environment, you can pay the right amount of money, but you don't need to pay at the top end?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of important thoughts there. I think, first of all, that environment is super important, and them being happy is super important. That's going to be the overarching thing why people will remain with you, whether the pay is really high or low. So we've always tried to be more on the way above average, maybe not the highest, but not too far beyond that. However, a large amount of the sort of reward for the team also came from performance-related bonuses as a practice collectively of how the practice performs. And that came in as a team, not towards an individual. And I think that's the key thing, because then everybody behaved as a team and not as individuals.
Yeah, I think it's interesting you say that. That's the way we operate as a business, because we take the view, if our marketing team creates some really good content that's seen by somebody, that means that they decide to send us an email or phone us, and then somebody answers the phone and has a really good first conversation, and then somebody goes out and sees that client and has a great interaction, and then we then put a practice to the market and it gets sold, and suddenly at every step, unless everybody's doing their bit properly, you don't get the end result. And it's lovely to hear your philosophy is the same in a dental practice, that all of those touch points have to work incredibly well, or else you don't get the patient to pass over their credit card.
Yeah, absolutely. You
don't need one Lionel Messi, you need a team.
Exactly.
Or Lionel, sorry.
Given your helicopter view and your experience in dentistry, what worries you about dentistry at the moment? What are the things that you're seeing in the future that bother you?
Patients driving the treatment. So if patients actually say, I have seen X, Y, and Z on social media, this is what I want, and they won't accept the correct treatment that's right for them and their mouth, because they have been persuaded that this is the way for them. That sort of worries me.
That's interesting.
And is that worry twofold, in the sense that the patient is pushing and dictating what they need without the knowledge to know whether it's the right solution? And then the flip side to that, is there a concern that there's dentists that would meet that need as prescribed by the patient, as opposed to starting doing the planning, doing the assessment, doing the analysis, and then prescribing the treatment?
Yeah, I think it's both. And actually, sometimes people learn a way of doing dentistry, and there might be multiple ways, and it's not about doing that way. It's actually applying the most suitable way for the patient, and that's going to be right for the patient. That's one of the keys, I think. So that does sort of scare me.
That's interesting. I must admit, I've heard that before, and I see quite a lot of that. And I think partly because there is now so much information available, not just through social media, but through so many channels, I think we can all fall into a trap thinking that we're quite well informed on a particular subject, but actually we've only got a limited amount of information, and particularly when it's something which is an area we don't fully understand. but it's quite visual. And by that, what I mean is that because of the cosmetic end of dentistry, we see an outcome we like the look of. We see veneers or whatever it might be. And we say, well, this is what I want. But going back to what you were saying before about, function, longevity, the look isn't actually that critical. There's many steps that happen before that.
I think people forget that we are actually all individuals. I always remember the fascinating journey. I don't know if you were with me. I did an endo lecture with some American bloke, and he did all these like 3D things of root canals. And I came out of it, and I was absolutely stunned, because in my head we all had the same number of roots, and they all looked exactly the same. So, one tooth, my tooth is the same as Andy's, the same as yours. And this bloke just blew that out of the water and said, hey, these are different patients, and this is where their root canals. And it made me realise that everyone was sort of individual. We have our teeth are designed in different ways, which must be, and our jaws are, and all that sort of thing of, as you say, just because I want to have this doesn't necessarily mean it's the best thing for me. But I'd say you're almost in consumer-led diagnostics, aren't you? Which is probably not such a good way.
But I think that's occurring in many facets of life. It probably is occurring in the medical field, not just in dentistry, where people are, Google is a powerful tool. There's a lot of information there. There's a lot of information on social media, and people are self-diagnosing and actually saying this is exactly what they want, whether it's
get a Brazilian butt lift with industrial silicone. Wonder why that goes wrong.
But also, I think with AI coming in, it could potentially get worse as well, because the inputs and the sources of information, people are able to describe very specifically their situation and what their needs are. And then artificial intelligence can tap into huge data sets and say, well, based on what you've described, it looks like this. And you may get to a point where people start, coming with effectively what they believe is their treatment plan. But no one's looked in their mouth. But they've basically requested what they want the outcome to be. I think there'll come a time when there will have to be perhaps a harder pushback from the profession in terms of taking control of that side of things. If you could go back in your career, Rahul, would you change anything? Would you have done anything differently with the benefit of where you sit now?
No, I think the key thing is I've enjoyed every part of the journey. So I've enjoyed being a multi-practice owner. I enjoyed the teaching side when I was doing the teaching. I enjoyed when I was clinical director at Dentex. I've always done coaching in some way since for the last 20 odd years with Babner anyway. So I've always enjoyed that, imparting sort of information. So I think the ethos of the practice that we had was changing lives, exceeding expectations. I think that continues as probably our personal sort of mission, and what we even do right now with Babner as well.
And tell us about what you're doing now, because you've stepped down as clinical director of Dentex. So you've obviously got an extraordinary amount of time available. So I'm sure the garden looks beautiful, but professionally, what's the next chapter looks like?
You're right. The garden is looking good. I'm going there, putting ground coffee beans on the roses in case the bees come and bite the roses off. So yes, that's what I'm doing right now. But what I do enjoy doing is actually help develop dentists to actually grow clinically and build them, and we help enjoy developing practices, so growing them really in a multifaceted way. Really, everything that we spoke about, whether it's vision, strategy, communication, marketing, efficiencies, KPIs, and of course the team putting that together over a course of a period of time, so it's learned, looked at, observed, and then improved upon, especially when they have challenges in implementation, etc.
I think given your wealth of experience, there's going to be no shortage of people queuing at your door to tap into that knowledge and experience, Rahul.
No, we're pretty busy with that as well. So yeah, it's good.
Which is good. We're at the time when we've got a couple of questions that we need to ask you. And the first one is, if you were a fly on the wall in a situation, where would you be and who'd be there?
Okay, so if I go back to the people, something Chris, you mentioned earlier on, that some of the things that we've learned in personal development, business, actually has been around for not just 20 years, probably for a decade, a century, I'd say. And the original concept of the mastermind occurred when Napoleon Hill spoke about this in his books. This is when Andrew Carnegie, Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, I think, Firestone used to get together, whether it's quarterly, 6 monthly, I don't know. But I'd love to have known what sort of conversations they were talking about, because they were really the pioneers in the world, really, in what they were doing. Car manufacturing, steel, light bulbs, so you name it, tires. And they were really successful. So this concept of mastermind and listening to what they were talking about would be pretty insightful at that period of time.
Yeah, that would be a great room to be in, wouldn't it? Yeah. And if you could meet somebody and sit down and have a coffee or a glass of wine, who would you like the opportunity to take to some time with?
Living or past? If it's past,
living or dead's fine.
Entirely up to you.
I'd actually go back to what you're doing in a way. I just realized this today. You are interviewing. You've had almost 200 podcasts, and you're gaining knowledge, and you're distilling that in some way. So this was done by Napoleon Hill, the writer of Think and Grow Rich and Law of Success, and he did that for a 20-year period, looking at these people, interviewing them, and actually distilling them down into philosophies which he wrote down into a book. And these were the first sort of book on personal development and business of their time in the sort of 1920s, 1930s. And most of the books that have occurred since then have some element that actually goes back to this original book, and actually what made him write that book, what made him think of actually reach out to different people, interview them, distill that, and create something that will help others. So we'd love to actually understand that as well.
Yeah, interesting. Interesting.
Cheers, Rahul. It's been a joy. It's been an absolute joy.
Yeah, it has.
And like I say, I'm fascinated to see what continues to come, because there's been certain key milestones that you've achieved, but we're not there yet. I still think there's a bunch more stuff that's coming down the line, which I'm excited about. Yeah, exactly.
No, thank you. It's been great being on here. Thank you very much.
No, not at all. It's been really nice
speaking
to you.
Take care, man.
Look after yourself.
Likewise. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Thank you for listening to this episode of Dentology, where we discuss the business of dentistry. If you like what you heard, please do subscribe where you found this episode. That would be amazing. And also follow us on Instagram.